Good evening. Welcome to the Napoleon Memoirs. I want everyone to know that we're going to start this huge concept art project called Throwing Stones, where we're going to be throwing incredible, gorgeous, sparkly jewelry all over the Hamptons all summer. Thrilled about it. This is the kind of bracelet, but everyone is going to be different. They're gorgeous, and it's all about helping people think differently about value. Okay. Money is in here. Okay. Money's only worth something because people think it's worth something. And I really want people to spend a lot of time thinking about what they value, what they care about, what matters to them. What is money? Okay. So I put so much work into this jewelry, wrap it up beautifully, photograph it. There's documents. I'm contractually obligated to anybody who gets this jewelry. Okay. So this is a big deal to me. And if you want to find out how to get it and you are in the Hamptons, you have to join my newsletter. That's where the information's coming out. Okay. It's big plans. It's very exciting. Okay. So now we're getting back to the memoirs. Count Charles Tristan Monson. We know he poisoned Napoleon. There's no other way. We've looked at it from every single angle. There was poison in Napoleon's hair. His symptoms were consistent with a certain method of slow arsenic poisoning, which was very typical with witches, actually. There's a dark occult thing, very connected with, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Okay, but this is nothing new. The poisoning, and then pretending it's natural causes, and then controlling the media and controlling the story for 200 years. Okay, this is very important stuff. They killed Napoleon in a very cruel way. And he was always saying, please just come and shoot me. I would love to be shot, but I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to give you freaking people the satisfaction of that. And that's what we're looking at when I go over St. Helena over and over and over again. This is important. Somebody stood up to them. And that's why I stand up to them. Because he tried. And yes, they did kill him. They did succeed in killing him. But we're still talking about him. And we still love him. And his enemies, do we love them? Think about it. Exactly. We're not fans. And yet, we're still dealing with them every single day of our lives. Okay, here we go. Conversions of which we are witnesses were renewed at a later period aboard the Northumberland and at St. Helena. It was only necessary for the emperor to be brought into contact with those who were strongly prejudiced against him in order to dissipate their prepossessions and to secure their admiration. Sir Hudson Lowe himself, I gotta redo that. That's terrible. If I mess it up that bad, I gotta redo it. The conversions of which we are witnesses were renewed at a later period on board the Northumberland and at St. Helena. It was only necessary for those, the emperor, to have brought into contact with those who were most strongly prejudiced against him in order to dissipate their prepossessions and to secure their admiration. Sir Hudson Lowe himself was at times incapable of resisting his seductions, as he has often acknowledged to me with the expression of a hyena who feels itself unable to burst the fetters by which it is bound. On the 23rd of July, we bade adieu to France. At 4 in the morning, Ushant was in sight, and soon after, we saw the coast distinctly. In the evening, we were in sight of English land. On the 25th, between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, the ship cast anchor in Torbay. General Gorgo awaited us there. The government had not allowed him to land, and he was a prisoner on board the Slaney. In order to prevent him from having any communication with the shore, the sloop was placed in quarantine to prevent all possible access. This state of things was a sinister omen of the fate which awaited us, and cast such a dark shade over our thoughts that we were insensible to the magnificent aspect of the hills among which we were embosomed. We were only roused from our gloom by the immense and endless spectacle of beautiful and elegant women who saluted us with their pocket handkerchiefs and shawls, which they transformed into flags as evidences of their sympathy. This revived our hopes that the national feeling would open the gates of England for our reception, or at least force the ministers to allow us to proceed to America. Such of us as were acquainted with English endeavored to ascertain the truth by conversing with such of the officers of the Bellerophon as had been led by their duties to be in communication with the shore or with the Slaney. Their reserve, however, baffled all our efforts and gave us multiplied proofs of the manner in which a uniform changes the whole nature of a man. The independent character of the English is no longer to be recognized under the epaulette, and so was the mystery, and the mouths so closed that we could almost have believed ourselves on board one of the Venetian galleys belonging to the Council of Ten. The thoughtful and anxious brow of Captain Maitland was the only indication which betrayed the nature of the news he had received at Torbay. On the next day, Count Lascases received a letter through the hands of Captain Maitland from Lady Clavering in London. This lady was an old and faithful friend of Madame de Lascases. The secrecy of letters is the only thing which is inviolable in English policy, with a very few rare exceptions. We cannot say as much for France. Lady Clavering had heard by the public papers of our going on board the Bellerophon, and of our expected arrival in England, either at Torbay or Plymouth. She was anxious to send duplicates of the reports which prevailed in London respecting the determination of the government. Messieurs Lascases said nothing. He kept to himself the dreadful news which he had learned of the almost certainty of a deportation to St. Helena. He said nothing even to the emperor because, as he often told us, he was not willing to cease to act as a comforter. The Duke of Rovigo, however, received an account from London of the highest importance, which dissipated every shadow of the illusion under which the emperor had hitherto labored. The Privy Council had just held a deliberation on the question whether the terms of the proceeding of the Congress of Vienna prevented England from delivering up the emperor to the vengeance of Louis XVIII, and the dispatches of the Duke of Wellington urged them to adopt bloody and terrible determinations. The energetic opposition of the Duke of Sussex alone saved England from the infamy of committing an execrable crime. There you go. It's terrible. All right, time for Lascases in Italian. Napoleon was completely innocent. All he did was fight for the people. He was the sovereign leader of France. Why were they doing all this to him? What was the huge problem? He didn't start those wars. He tried to stop them. Okay, so the truth is completely the opposite of what we're taught. We're taught he was so ambitious. He was always trying to stop those wars. So somebody else wanted those wars. Who? Who wanted those wars? Who benefited from those wars? Who's still fomenting wars today? Who? These are the questions. Mercoledì 20, dopo il pranzo, uno di noi fece osservare come in quel medesimo giorno, in quel medesimo istante, un anno fa, 20 marzo, l'imperatore era meno isolato, meno tranquillo. Io mi mettevo alla tavola, alla Tuileries, leggevo Napoleone, vi era giunto con difficoltà e aveva corso per lo meno i pericoli di una battaglia. Infatti, al suo arrivo era stato circondato da più migliaia di ufficiali e cittadini che si lo erano, per così dire, strappato. Non aveva salito il palazzo, ma era stato portato. Io che avevo più apparenza di tumulto contro alcuno che volessi spranare che non d'ordini e di rispetto verso persone che intendassi onorare, ma bisognava giudicare che il sentimento e le intenzioni era un misto di entusiasmo e d'amore, spinto sino alla rabbia e al delirio. L'imperatore aggiunse che forse più d'uno ne parlerebbe questa sera in Europa e che a dispetto delle vigili poliziesi voterebbero moltissimo bottiglie a suo nome. Il commissario esagerò da poi sul re di Roma. Era l'anniversario della sua nascita e l'imperatore notò che aveva 5 anni. Quindi rivolse il discorso al parto dell'imperatrice e sembrava compiacersi vantandosi di essersi in quella circostanza palesato buon marito quanti altri mai egli aiutò tutto notte l'imperatrice a camminare. Noi che facevamo parte della casa ne sapevamo qualche cosa. Fin dalle 10 della sera eravamo stati raccolti al palazzo ove passammo l'intera notte. Le grida giungevano talvolta sino a noi verso il mattino. L'ostetrico avevano detto all'imperatore di essere cessati i dolori, i poteri, il parto tirarsi ancora per le lunghe. Ci si passì nel bagno e noi fummo concetati prevenendoci di restarni in casa. L'imperatore era appena adagiato nel bagno che i dolori ripicchiarono e l'ostetrico corsi fuori di sé dicendogli esser lui il più infelice degli uomini, giacché di tanti migagliari di parti che accadevano a Parigi non se ne era mai presentato né più di questo difficile. L'imperatore, vestendosi in tutta fretta, lo rassicurava rispondendogli sarebbe imperdonabile che un uomo il quale sapeva il suo mestiere perdesse il senno. Non serve nulla che lo dovessi alterare, doversi figurare, sì, esistere al parto di una donna volgare della via San Dionigi, la natura non aver due leggi, e seri ben certo che egli si adopterebbe per il meglio e che soprattutto non avrebbe a temere alcun rimprovero gli venni rappresentato correre gravi pericolo la madre o il figlio al che senza esistenza risposi. Con la madre avrò un altro figliuolo, operati insomma come se aspettassi il figlio di un ciabattino. Sciolto presso l'imperatrice, si assicurò che la trovava severamente in pericolo. Il fanciullo presentavasi male e tutto faceva temere che ne rimarrebbe soffocato. L'imperatore domandò a Dubois perché non si accingesse all'operazione e questi si scusò dicendo non voler operare, che alla presenza del commissario, il quale non era parecchio arrivato. Ma che vi dirà? Egli, diceva l'imperatore, se per una testimonianza o per una giustificazione e come invece sua, tu allora dei posti e vesti si misi all'opera alla vista dei feriti chirurgici. L'imperatrice prorupì in grida dolorose, esclamando che la si voleva uccidere. E lei era tenuto fortemente dall'imperatore e dalla signora di Montesquieu de Corvisart, giunto in quell'istante. La signora Montesquieu colse stranamente l'occasione di incoraggiarla, assicurandole che anch'essa si era trovata più volte nella medesima situazione. Nulla di meno, l'imperatrice era sempre persuasa che con lei si tenesse un contegno diverso dagli altri e ripeteva spesso: Io sarò dunque sacrificata perché sono imperatrice. E poi ella stessa confermò all'imperatore di essere stato quello veramente il suo timore. Finalmente viene liberata. Il pericolo era stato sì grande, diceva l'imperatore, che tutte le etichette richieste e stabilita in queste circostanze fu posta da parte ed il fanciullo deposto sul pavimento, mentre ogni sollecitudine rivolta era alla madre. Vi rimase alcuni istanti e credevasi morto. Corrisore lo rialzò, lo stropicciò e gli fece mettere un grido. All right, this is like big stuff. So it's the 20th of March, and it's the birthday of his son, and his son at that day would be 5 years old, and he's so sad. So he tells the story of his son's birth. And it was a horrible birth where Marie Louise, this Austrian princess, her life was very much in danger, and her mother had died in childbirth, and people just dropped dead like flies around her back in Austria. So when she was having this horrible birth where the child, it's kind of the child or her, she kept screaming, You're going to sacrifice me because I'm an empress. And she's kept screaming that. This is in all the memoirs that she's screaming, You're going to sacrifice me because I'm an empress. She's sure they're going to kill her. Okay, so that's her outlook in life. She's sure that she's just going to be killed like it's nothing. Because you have to understand her perspective. And Napoleon said, Of course, we're not going to kill you. We're not like that here. This is the truth. This is crazy stuff. Anyway, so they put her first. The child's born. They figured the child was going to die. They put the child aside, just looked after her, and then turned out that the child did live. And this is what happened. And I think he's reminding her that he saved her life that day. And he's asking her to save their child's life, which of course she did not do. But could she have? She's in a very sick situation. I don't know if she could have saved him, but she most certainly, to my knowledge, did not try to save him. She wrote him a letter and said, back down or they'll kill you. And then he died. Okay? And there are all of these agents that chase me around to try to make the story go away. Okay? People need to understand how the rulers of this world work. They are for power. They don't care about people. Okay? So he's trying to remind her, I saved your life. I really don't even know if she could have done it, but I don't think she did do anything for him. I think she was out for herself. I think she was obsessed with luxury. And I really see this Austrian princess, Marie Louise, as a cautionary tale because I see a lot of people that remind me of Marie Louise right now. And it's not a good way to go. It's not a good life. She was not a happy person. And she had to watch them kill her son. And they took her away. They took her son away from him. And she got a handler. And she was crazy about him. And she didn't care about anything as long as she got her beautiful situation in Italy. She was out for herself and for the best position she could get. She was very brainwashed to think that these things were important. They are not important. The more we learn about Marie Louise, she was a slave to luxury. I don't even think she was a bad person. She just could not live without luxury. And once these people get used to luxury, they'll do anything to maintain it. And that's what I see all over the place these days. All right, now poor Lavalette still in jail, dealing with the fact that he's going to be executed. He's not going to be able to protect his wife and his daughter, and his son just died. Little baby son. It's all his wife wanted was this little baby son, and he died just because they're so miserable. This is so sad. This is a really difficult story, but we're going to get through it. Le lendemain, pour la première fois depuis 4 mois, elle va me voir. Sa pâleur, sa maigreur et son battement me firent trembler. Elle tomba dans mes bras. Sa voix était son timbre. Et pendant près d'une heure, je n'en pus tirer un seul mot. Enfin, elle se remit peu à peu. Elle se fut de sa bouche que j'ai appris les détails de sa réception par le roi. Elle était venue seule, mais le comte de Charvoisin vint la chercher pour la reconduire chez elle. Ma reconnaissance exige que je n'oublie pas ce digne ami. J'ai connu M. de Cavassois 8 ans auparavant en Suresnes, où j'étais son voisin de campagne. Elle avait alors une nièce qui depuis a poussé le comte de Clermont-Tonnerre. Quoiqu'il n'eût pas éteint la vieillesse, il en avait déjà la mauvaise santé asthmatique de son enfance. Il avait quitté le service avant la Révolution, était élevé en philosophe chrétien loin du monde, qui n'aimait pas uniquement occupé de l'éducation de sa jeune pupille et d'une société de charité dont il avait provoqué l'établissement et qui prospérait par ses bienfaits. Nous étions loin de nous entendre sur beaucoup de questions politiques, mais en nous faisant quelques concessions, l'union la plus douce n'avait cessé de régner entre nous. Je l'avais perdu de vue depuis la Restauration, mais il revint à moi dans l'infortune. Et pendant le dernier, le plus terrible mois de ma détention, il venait tous les jours me voir, après avoir assisté à une messe qui faisait dire chaque matin à mon attention. Il était cependant d'une admirable modération d'opinion. Mes situations semblaient exiger de lui qu'il me présentât les consolations de la religion. Ces discours avaient un charme séduisant. Il y apportait une onction, un abandon de cœur qui me touchait, mais j'étais trop vrai pour ne pas lui avouer qu'il n'y avait pas moyen de nous entendre. Je lui exposai avec simplicité tout ce qu'il m'était impossible de mettre. Elle disait ça, ces instances sans témoigner la moindre impatience et le plus léger refroidissement. Au moment où Madame Lavalette paraît sur la scène pour la première fois, il me paraît convenable de donner quelques détails sur sa personne et notre mariage. So finally, his wife comes to jail to visit him after she knows that he's going to be killed. And she's trembling and she's pale and she can't even talk anymore. She's so sad. And then she says this man, Mr. de Corvison, who probably was a royalist, and he said they didn't agree on pretty much anything. But when Lavalette had problems and his wife had problems, he came to support them. And he it sounds like he tried to like convert him to be a Catholic, and I don't think Lavalette's really into it. But he's trying to like save his soul. But he's giving him credit for coming around when he had problems. Anyway, so it's time for into marking Spanish. So this is such sad stuff. Okay, so but we do it to learn so we can understand what we're facing. Había vuelto al emperador a tomar sus hábitos de la mañana y solía salir a respirar el fresco antes de levantarse al sol. Un día que se hallaba con dolor en las encías entró en un cuarto, dirigiéndome la palabra aún antes de yo le apercibiese. Estoy padeciendo, doctor. Tengo dolor de muelas. ¿Qué debo hacer? Veamos lo que dice esta obra. Yo tenía delante mis láminas anatómicas desarrolladas y sin darme lugar para responder, se puso a disertar sobre aquel gran trabajo. Sentía que este no hubiese sido hecho más antes, pues él se hubiera dedicado a la anatomía y con saberla tendría mayor satisfacción. Decía haberse ensayado varias veces a aprenderla, pero que su repugnancia había podido más que el deseo de aprender. No habiendo podido nunca vencer el horror que le inspiraba los cadáveres. Con estas láminas se puede decir que ya son inútiles las disecciones. De un golpe de vista se puede conocer el juego y la estructura de los órganos. Se van sus relaciones y se siguen sus rivales. Aquí está bien patente el cuerpo humano. Es lástima que la ejecución de esa plancha se haya retardado tanto, pues son magníficas, doctor. Quiero que se me dediquen y que aparecen bajo mis auspicios, gloriándome. Hacer este último servicio a la ciencia. Yo suministraré los caudales para que vayas a Europa y las publiques, pues es un monumento a cuya cooperación ambiciono en varias ocasiones. Me reiteró esta especie cada vez me hablaba con nueva satisfacción de aquella empresa. Pero ¿por qué no habéis trazado una línea de demarcación para indicar lo que es vuestro? Es lo que es de Mascagni. Y si se apetece hacer a cada cual homenaje del fruto de sus tareas, pues habéis redactado la obra, escrito el texto de la anatomía de los pintores, dando este trabajo bajo el nombre del profesor. Esto es demasiada modestia y desprendimiento. Cada cual debe tener lo que le pertenece, sin duda. Pero mi parte está ya hecha. Mascagni ha grabado 30 láminas con que ha probado sus descubrimientos. Lo demás me pertenece y comparece que yo solo reclamo la diferencia. So, Antomarchi is very identified with this innovator in science named Mascagni, who created anatomical drawings so people could find out what was inside the body without having to dissect cadavers, basically. And Napoleon said that he was always fascinated by science and health, but he couldn't handle being around cadavers. And he was thrilled that he could look at these drawings that Markey brought him. And what's so interesting is Napoleon could not handle bad smells. He was ultra hypersensitive to bad smells. And he couldn't handle looking at cadavers for what he did, and he would, despite all of this, after battles, he would himself go out and find out if any of the poor soldiers were still living and try to save them. And he wouldn't let anyone else do this. And that's why some of the English officers tried to treat him well, because he would even rescue the other side. And he saved a relation of Elphinstone, and all of them are saying we have to be really nice to him because he was so good, even to our side. So everybody knew that he was an unusually good person, even the other side. And they still had to do these horrible things to him because that's what the people who owned the English government wanted done to them. And if they wanted to get their paychecks, they were going to have to do horrible things to him. And I can't talk about this enough. The things that people do for money, because it's so hard to get money when one group controls all of the money. There is not free trade. So how do we even live? We have to give in to this horrible compromise. It has to change. It has to change. We need to have free trade in this world so we can do what's right and live with integrity and not have to choose between feeding our families and doing horrible things. And we've all seen this play out. It has to change. And it's up to everybody to make it change and to demand that it change. Because the people running things are not popular. They're not liked. To know them is to not like them. And they only get by because they have all these masks they wear, all of these wonderful, attractive people that they use as puppets. All right, time for German. I believe this is still Napoleon explaining how he won Italy. 11 Uhr kam die Kolonne des Rektivfluges der österreichischen Armee in der ihr eingewiesenen Stellung an. Sie fand unsere Reserve-Division von Dilsen unter eine Brigade fort, von ihr dazu verwendet, und diese in Schach zu halten. Die andere 4000 Mann starke Brigade stellte sich auf der Hohe auf Verkehr über den vergriffenen nach dem Plateau von Rivoli. Sie hatte keine Artillerie mit und glaubte der französischen Armee in den Rücken gekommen zu sein, aber es war zu spät. Kaum auf der Hoche angekommen, konnte sie die Sprengung der 3 österreichischen Divisionen des Zentrums und Flügels sehen. Nach einer bestigen Kanonade ward auch sie angegriffen und sind Galzer und Ganze genommen. Die 2. Brigade, die weiteste Reserve von Desenzano gegenüberstand, ergriff die Flucht. Sie ward lebhaft verfolgt und ein großer Teil desselben getötet oder gefangen genommen. Es war 1 Uhr nachmittags, so überall war der Feind auf der Flucht und ward lebhaft verfolgt. Joubert rückte so schnell vor, dass einen Augenblick lang wir die ganze Armee Alvinsis für genommen hielten. Joubert gelenkte an die Felstreppe, über welche der Feind sich allein zurückziehen konnte. Aber wie sie fühlte die Gefahr, in welcher er sich befand, ließ es seine Reservemannschaft verrücken und hielt Joubert zurück, sodass diese sogar etwas Terrain verlor. Der Schlag war gewonnen. Wir hatten Kanonen, Fahnen und einen großen Saal Gefangene. 200 Taschenmünzen, die mit der Armee sich wieder vereinigen wollten, stießen auf die Division, die uns von Vega nach Verona abgeschnitten hatte. Sogleich verweiterte sich im Rücken des Gerückten, dass die französischen Armee zu Geld und verloren sei. Mehr als einmal war an diesem Tage der Obergeneral vom Feinde umgeben. Mehrere Pferde wurden unter ihm getötet, Orte verwundete. Chabot hielt Verona mit seiner Hand voll Menschen, aber die Divisionen von Caldera waren dann zweitens zu St. Michael so geschlagen worden, dass sie nichts weiter hatte unternehmen können. Sie begnügte sich damit, ihre Stellung zu behaupten. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a good evening.